views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Coming up on this edition of Perspectives, October's Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Coming up, we go front and center on this show talking about creating a safe haven for victims of domestic violence. That's up next with yours truly, Daren Jaime.
What's on your mind? Express what's on your mind. What's on your mind?
Anything relevant to life, you bring it to the table. Whether you make a move solo or a movement with a stable. No fables, you speak on your decisions. Cause in the long run, it's your voice, your views, your vision. Keeping it real with many messages for you to know. This ain't radio, but DJ runs the show. Entertainment, he rocks it. Politics, he locks it. The host with the most would handle any topic. Don't forget to share your perspective with shines of light. Cause it might make a difference in someone else's life.
Make a difference in someone's life. Express what's in your heart and your mind. Share your perspective.
What's your perspective? Let them know.
And hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Perspectives. I am Daren Jaime. Of course, we thank you for joining us. As always, you can watch Perspectives here on BronxNet's Channel 67. If you have Verizon Fios, of course, that would be Channel 2133 or anytime on the web at bronxnet.org. We also encourage you to stay connected to us on all of our social media platforms at BronxNet TV. If you're looking to catch me personally, our personal page, Daren C. Jaime on Facebook. That's the professional page. And then also you can catch me at DC Jaime 23 on Instagram and Twitter. There you'll be able to share your perspective and then also possibly get some inspiration as well. Well, coming up, we go front and center today with the issue of domestic violence. As we said at the top of the show, October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Our guest today, a very special person, a trailblazer for criminal justice reform, education reform, women and girl issues, even more, a voice here in New York against human trafficking. She is the CEO and president and executive director of Not On My Watch. You'll learn more about that in a little bit. And she also chairs the New York City Faith-Based Coalition Against Human Trafficking and Domestic Violence. Reverend Q English formed and served as convener of the Traffic Free NYC, a community-led convening that brings together service providers, city agencies, and survivors for the sole purpose of combating human trafficking in New York City. She's been here before, but she's here again, and we're glad to have the Reverend Q English here with us on Perspectives. And Reverend Q, good to have you.
So good to be here, Daren. Always good to be with you, even in this virtual space, this virtual world, this world 2.0. That we've all adapted to. But yeah, thank you for having me. So good to be here.
No, I'm glad to have you. And, as we said, we're all trying to make adjustments during this virtual world. I think the COVID-19 pandemic has shown how we've had to make adjustments with all that's happening. But when we talk about the issue of domestic violence, COVID-19 has had a huge impact. And even though October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, I think this particular year with COVID, there is a whole nother set of a whole nother lens that we have to put on domestic violence and some things that we want to probably highlight a little bit differently. So talk to me about your perspective and how COVID-19 has actually changed domestic violence.
For me, even the numbers that we've had, even when we started out there, and nothing is ever real. It all based on what's being reported and how it's being reported and the categories it's being placed in, etc. So even though we know that we've had a problem with domestic violence here, and the mayor's office and different ones are doing, their job and trying to lower the numbers, create greater awareness about this atrocity, we still know that there's an uptick of this atrocity, because if you think about it, the attention has been on COVID-19. I mean, that has been like the center of everyone's conversation purview, particularly as it relates to homelessness increasing and joblessness. And so some of these other things that used to be front and center, not that they aren't a part of many organizations and people's lenses, sometimes it gets a little bit pushed in the back burner. And as a result of that, there are the fear level. You got to think about domestic violence and the fear that it perpetrates. You think about the children who normally would be in school, and now they're home for a longer, more extended period of time with their abuser. The same thing is particularly if the abuser lost their jobs or and are struggling in that area. What do you think? That it's not like they're losing their stripes through the COVID. Their stripes are widening, and their intensity is becoming more prevalent. And so there's no question that the abuse is on the increase, is on the rise. New York Post reported it. And even if it's not being reported directly to NYPD or to some of our, or to the city agency, a lot of that, Daren, has to do with the fear. The fear. They have to go back to their home. And we think about, and we ask the wrong question of, why don't you leave? The question is, why can't you leave? Why do I have to stay? Because you don't understand the worst time to leave. The moment you leave is the highest point of where the perpetrator ends up killing their victims.
Right.
And so you have to be careful with that.
And the other part about it is, you talk about the lack of reporting. I think we talk a little bit about this too. When you have a lack of reporting, it's simply because number one, I can't come out my door if my attacker, male or female, is in the house.
Right.
The criminal justice system is not set up to accept too many more new cases unless they're jailing people. But on the lower end, things that can get easy bail, or we know the whole situation with bail.
Exactly.
You're gonna end up right back home. And so people say, I'm not gonna open my mouth. I'm not gonna say anything.
Right. That's the exact point. Now the leniency and the lack of privacy for some of these victims is right in our face, even with this bail reform piece. And I know people are arguing back and forth, yes to bail reform, no to bail reform. But when you think about my domestic violence victims and how easy it is now to get out on bail, and now the fact that some in this whole discovery and disclosure piece, where now you're going to disclose where our victims reside, that is danger zone, danger. That's what I have to say about that. And I don't think some of the things that we've put in place have been well thought out. There are those that need to be in jail. Okay, there are those, and there's those that need to be out of jail. There needs to be justice. But we need to think about that, and we do need to reform that. That's another conversation. But my point is, right now, it is now not a good place for my victims because of what you're saying. The way the system has been updated or changed rather, and because of the fear that is inherent in victims that are being controlled by their perpetrator. How much more are they being controlled today? And so that's what we're doing.
I don't mean to cut you off. I want to ask the question a little bit here, because when you talk about control, I had a conversation with somebody about this particular issue a little bit earlier. I want to get your response to it. You've never heard it, and so I'm going to throw it out at you. Okay. So they're saying when you have somebody at home, right, and there is this lack of reporting, but that there's a potential for domestic violence. From a person that we were talking to says, the argument is, well, shouldn't it be a little bit safer because everybody now is at home, so you can hear, you can see things? And my answer to them was, no, it doesn't work like that. But I just want to get your take on it.
It doesn't work like that. Garbage. That just gives them more liberty to create even greater damage and to bring them under their control even more. If there is no real counseling and mental health treatment and all of that taking place as a family and as a family unit, do you really think that this is like the self-healing thing going on now that they're all in a home together? Absolutely not. And just basically based on the climate that we're in, because now you got me totally revved up, based on the climate that we're in, how do we expect them? How do we expect everybody, the mental health issues are like off the charts right now, the PTSD. If they were already suffering with that and they're not getting care, and now they're facing homelessness, and now they're facing joblessness, now they don't know where their next paycheck is coming from, and now they're in the house where the noise level is up and they need quiet and they can't get quiet. Where do they let out their tension? Where have they been letting out their tension? They've been letting it out to the victims that reside with them. That is not going to change. It's not like, okay, now that we're all together, we're one big happy home. Garbage. That's not what's happening inside those homes. If they are not seeking help and if they're not getting care, then it is increasing, period.
I want to take a quick break and come back and want to talk about where do we go from here? Amidst everything that we got going on, where do we go from here? What's some ways that the public can help, and what's some ways that we can really put pressure on government and those who are responsible to really be an advocate for those victims of domestic violence? Stay with us. The Reverend Q English is here. She's our guest here on Perspectives. We'll be back with more show coming up right after this. And welcome back here to Perspectives. Daren Jaime here with you. So glad to have you share with us as we're talking about October, the month of domestic violence awareness, where we bring you news and information with regards to domestic violence. Our guest, the Reverend Q English, as she continues to share with us a little bit more and gives us a little bit more insight into the whole domestic violence trauma and literally the drama concerning domestic violence amidst COVID-19. And thank you for staying with us. And Reverend Q, I want to get to this perspective. We talked a little bit about the problems, but honestly, where do we go from here when you talk about New York City, when you talk about the state? An argument can be made on the part of those who are advocates for those with domestic violence that New York simply is not doing enough when it comes to this, particularly in the pandemic. Do you agree that New York is not probably doing enough and we're not doing enough in support of those domestic violence victims?
You know, and I need to be a little bit more careful with this answer because I feel like everyone could do more. And when I think of everyone, I think about New York City agencies. I think about inclusive of, NYPD, inclusive of community, inclusive of faith leaders. So I think for me, I like to weigh the responsibility on us as a whole. And when I think about our faith leader level, and it's really difficult, but we know the calls that we get when there is trouble. I think for community, like those that are friends and or family members or faith leaders, we need to do, especially those that we know have been dealing with this in their homes, we need to do a better job of checking in with them. Because we get so caught up in what we're going through on a day-to-day basis and being absorbed in our own world. And God knows we have our own world. We have our own world. We have our own challenges. And that's just reality. But I really feel like we need to do more. Let me start first with community and faith leaders and family members and checking in on those have had situations of domestic violence. And the check-in, you have to encourage them, whoever they are. You can't say to leave, but you have to encourage them to get help. Continue to build that relationship. Don't give up on them, because it's easy, Daren, for us to give up on them. It's like, you know what? They're not trying to help themselves. They're not trying to do anything about their situation. But the truth of the matter is they're so messed up. They're just messed up in their heads and their decision making. They're weighing so much. They're traumatized. You know what trauma can do? And the problem is that we try to create an expiration date for their trauma. And the moment we attempt to create that expiration date for their trauma is when we set our limitations on how much we're going to be involved in that person's life. But the moment we lift that expiration date, that means I'm in it for the long haul. I'm in it because I'm in relationship with you, and I'm going to do what it takes. If it feels like you have the strength to pick up that call, to make the call, I'm going to be there right with you. I will be on a three-way with you. If you don't have the strength right now and you feel like you're just going to sit on the floor, I'm going to sit on the floor with you. I'm going to weep with you. In other words, I'm in it for the long haul. So my advice to the community and family and faith leaders, and even us, even with our Bibles and in our religious, tactics, we got to be careful that we too don't set that expiration date, and nor do we come in as this Superman mentality. Here I am to save a day. Here's my quote. Here's my oil. Here's the scripture. Boom, you're done. It's kaput, finished. Make get up. We can't tell a person when to get up. The best thing we can do is to meet them where they are and walk with them where they are. So that's my number one advice, especially to those of us that deal with victims and or know of those that deal with victims. And sometimes for those that we don't have a relationship with, but we may be their neighbor, we may be, we see them, we observe them. I would encourage you to carry some of these cards that are out there. You can get them like online, like, the hotline to call, like just little business cards that you can just slip to somebody. You don't have to engage in lengthy conversation. Just say, hey, if you need help, hey, feel free to call that number. Sometimes they'll just look at you like, mind your business. This ain't none of your business. At that point, you understand where your limitations are. Right. However, for those that we have relationship with, I have to encourage you to do three things. One, stick with them. Stick with them. Number two, don't set an expiration date on their trauma. It is not your right. And number three, don't play Superman with them, because Superman can appear to them as a secondary victimizer. That means it'll make them feel like you're controlling them the way they're being controlled in the home. When you're in relationship, you intentionally walk with them where they are to the place they need to be. When you're Superman, then you're talking about you're going to control when, where, how. It's one thing to give advice, and it's another thing to shove it down their throats, because otherwise you will appear to them as a secondary victimizer, and they will shut the door to that relationship.
There's more to domestic violence than the physical abuse. And I think too many times the emphasis is always placed on the physical abuse. So when you talk about being a support, and then you talk about people being aware of domestic violence, give us a little bit more about the different forms, because you got the financial, you got the psychological. Talk to us a little bit about, so that way people might be able to see potential cases where there are domestic violence that we just may simply overlook.
Yeah, that's very good. And it's really interesting. I'm going to give you an example of a real example of the psychological piece. And the person interpreted this, oh, he just loves me, right? So the woman was required, and I think talking about it by example may be the best way. The woman, was told by her husband, okay, so call me when you're, I see you when you leave, and if he call me when you're on your way to the train, call me when you're in the train, call me when you're at your job, when you make it to your job. And then there would have to be a check-in during the job, and it would have to be a face-to-face so he can see what was going on. And then he would have visual cameras in the home. And she's thinking, oh my gosh, he just loves me so much. But the truth of the matter, it was rooted in control. And that is psychological trauma. That is psychological abuse. Because when that woman missed that appointed time, she paid for it. And she was thinking, well, he loves me much. He cares for me so much. I have to, do these things that he asked at a certain time period. You're just thinking it's love, and it's really based in control. Regarding the financial piece, and if they have to control all of your spending, how it's being spent, you no longer have control of your own bank account. He gives you an allowance. He's saying, this is how much you have. You have to always go to him for permission. That's not necessarily him managing a budget. It can be financial violence, financial control. And you have to, and it's hard to really pinpoint that, but I'm telling you, some of this controlling over the finances comes through. And I had the people talk about where he would write them a check, and this was their allowance for them and the children for the entire month. And for them to ask for more money, even though it was their own money, right? that is financial bondage, okay,
Yeah.
to a perpetrator. And then even if it's his money, sometimes, Darren, that's the reason why people don't leave, because they think about, where am I going to be able to provide for my child? I'm going to have to take this so I can know my child, and that we're going to have a roof over our head, that we're going to have food on the table. That is some of the things that they face as a result of being under that financial bondage. They feel like if they don't oblige, they will not be able to take care of themselves.
I want to come back and talk about that word, roof over your head. I want to talk about a residence, and Reverend Q English is going to share a little bit with that when we return right here on Perspectives. And we're back here on Perspectives, and Daren Jaime here with you. Our topic of conversation today, dealing with domestic violence. October, of course, Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Pleased to have the Reverend Q English with us, as she's been sharing a lot about domestic violence and bringing us some insight into awareness, as well as what we as a community can actually do to assist. And we talked about putting a roof over their head. And Reverend Q, that's what we had to go to break at. But I know for you, you're really taking the bull by the horns, proverbially. And you're also doing something by way of a home and a residence. So I want you to share a little bit about the residence that's coming up around the corner and how you're actually helping in this fight.
That's good. And I do want everyone to know that the Office of, to Combat Domestic and Gender-Based Violence do have available apartments for victims and their children. So if you know anyone, I would really, really encourage you to reach out to the Office to Combat Domestic and Gender-Based Violence out of the Office of the Mayor that can help with placement and obtaining vouchers and funds, vouchers to get our folks in these apartments and places. And yes, we are having challenges. I mean, to say this right before I go to that point, we are having challenges, with landlords, in some cases taking the vouchers, even though they're required to. And if you run into those type of situations, please do report it to the Office to Combat Domestic and Gender-Based Violence. And they have a unit that looks at that very, very, very closely. And now, as it relates to residences, just in general, a lot of the people that we find that's hanging out on the streets that are homeless have had a bout with violence and domestic violence. And part of the reason why they're homeless, and they don't even know how to reach out for these resources. And as a result of COVID, our homelessness population has increased, and we all know about this, what's going on with emptying of apartments, etc. So one of the things that the Department of Homeless Services is doing is the mayor said we need emergency stabilization for these individuals. We need to open up more places and residences and to be able to help these individuals become stable and find them permanent housing. And so I'm just really excited about the opportunity as not on my watch to be a service provider. We're working on it. We're not finalized with everything yet, but we're very, very, very close, because that's my dream. We're going to start out with this residence, and we're calling it High Point because we're going to help people reach their apex in life. And so High Point residents, so we'll have a residence for them, and we'll have for the homeless population, and we want to move on to have the residence for those combating domestic violence and those that are combating human trafficking with heavily comprehensive service enriched, trauma-informed, victim-centered care, and with a walk-in center. So we're looking forward to rolling these things out throughout the year, throughout the upcoming years. But right now the focus is that of, because of COVID, in helping reach those that are homeless, those that are on the street, that may have had a bout with domestic violence and or trafficking, or maybe not. They just need that bed and that warm place. And so we're excited to be able to, and then looking forward to working out in the next couple of months to be able to service about 50 and then up to 70 individuals.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Listen, I want to get a chance to we talk a lot about domestic violence in the course of the show. I know you also do very good work with human trafficking. You're very close to that. Just want to give you an opportunity to share a little bit about the human trafficking situation, because amidst COVID, some people think that has actually decreased as well, but that's also increased.
That has increased, Daren. Sometimes when things go dark, they think that it's not happening. You got these trap houses, you got these girls trapped in these locations. I'm so grateful that we do have a human trafficking unit under NYPD, but they too are limited. That's why we need everybody, Daren, everybody. And they're not, these are young. These are our young kids, and they're not just girls. They're girls and boys. Can you imagine them being stuck in a home where they're just being trafficked because people are living off of their bodies, whether it's just to pay their rent, living off of their bodies, but it's exploitation. It's exploitation, period. That's what we're dealing with. And so it has increased, and we do need to do more, and we do need to be more creative in this space, and we do need to check on our children, particularly those, that exhibit signs. Go through trainings. We hold trainings. Not on my watch, hold trainings. If you're interested in training, email us. We got a training coming up in the end of October. We have a training coming up in November. What's the training about? To teach you, how do I become aware? What are my signs? What am I looking for? What do I do after I see the signs? That's a lot of the hang up. People say they see the signs, now what? Is it NYPD? Is it an agency? We do have a problem, and that problem has not gone away, Daren. And yes, we do need to pray as faith leaders, but we need to put our feet in prayer to action and begin to do more in this area in taking care of the most vulnerable among us, which are those aging out of foster care. Keep an eye on those in the foster care system, those in the shelter system. These are the vulnerable, those in our low income, impoverished communities. Those are the vulnerable among us, and those in our NYCHA apartments, etc. Those are the ones that you really want. If you can, extend yourself as a mentor, do it. I know we're going through a lot on our own, but if you do find time, extend yourself. Call these agencies and let them know, hey, I want to be vetted as a mentor. We're going to be doing more of that, particularly with the foster care foster care homes and stuff. And so do as much as you can. What you can do is advocate for more resources, advocate with your government, local, city, local and state and federal, asking for more resources in the area of for trafficked victims and for those that are in domestic violence.
Yeah, we got to wrap it there. Reverend Dr. Q English, I want to tell you thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
I think it's so much that we can really unpack, and it's so much you really have to pay attention to. I mean, we didn't even get the chance to talk about the NYPD, given the fact that you got more layoffs happening. They're on a shortage, and they've got a short staff. And then we talk about enforcement and how are you able to actually deal with the human trafficking issue, the domestic violence issue. We got a shorter police force, and we're talking about the area of enforcement.
Let's talk about that. Let's bring me back. I want to talk about that.
You coming back. The producers are watching and listening. You are coming back. Reverend Q English, thank you so much for being with us here on Perspective.
Thank you for having me, Daren. God bless you.
Bless you. All righty. The Reverend Q English, our guest here on Perspectives, want to thank her for joining us. Also want to thank you for watching. Now listen, if you want to watch Perspectives every week here on Bronx, it's channel 67. Verizon Files, that'd be channel 2133. For all of us here on Perspectives, I'm Daren Jaime saying take care, God bless. Share your perspective with somebody else. You just don't know. It might make a difference in someone else's life.